No one marries a fat girl, sir, she cried. But what the Korean Mafia boss did next changed her life. A young woman is humiliated at her own wedding, mocked in front of everyone, and left feeling hopeless and exposed. Suddenly, a dangerous Korean Mafia boss steps in, claiming her as his own, dragging her into a world of wealth, power, and deadly secrets she can't escape. She thinks she's just a pawn in his ruthless game, but his enemies see her too, and soon, danger surrounds her from every side. As tension and desire build, she realizes that surviving him might be the hardest thing of all, and trusting him could be even more dangerous. Will she escape his world, or will the man who terrifies everyone else become the only one who can save her and change everything she thought she knew about love? The crystal chandeliers cast a harsh glare on Yoona as she followed Jae-hyun through the opulent hallway of the Grand Hyatt. Her white wedding gown whispered against the marble floor, the fabric that had made her feel like a princess, now feeling like chains wrapped around her body. Her ex-fiancé's cruel words still rang in her ears, each step away from the reception hall a small mercy. Jae-hyun moved with predatory grace ahead of her, his broad shoulders cutting an intimidating figure in his perfectly tailored black suit. The wedding guests they passed pressed themselves against the walls, their eyes downcast, terror evident in their rigid postures. Yoona's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd heard whispers about the Kong family's influence in Seoul, about the man who now held her fate in his hands. "Wait," she managed, her voice stronger than she felt. "I don't understand what's happening." Jae-hyun stopped so abruptly she nearly collided with his back. He turned and Yoona's breath caught in her throat. Up close, his features were sharp enough to cut. High cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed to see right through her, and lips pressed into a stern line. A small scar near his jaw only added to his dangerous appeal. "That man," he said, his voice low and controlled, "dishonored you in my territory, in my hotel." His words carried a weight that made Yoona shiver despite the warm evening. "Your hotel?" Yoona's mind raced. Of course. The Grand Hyatt was one of the Kang family's legitimate businesses. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly very aware of how exposed she felt in her strapless gown. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but I can handle this myself." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Can you?" His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on the unshed tears she'd been fighting back. "Do you have somewhere to go? Someone to call?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Her parents had spent their savings on this wedding, believing her ex-fiancé's family connections would secure her future. Her friends were all back in the reception hall, probably already gossiping. About her humiliation? She had nothing but her phone and a wedding dress she wanted to burn. "I'll figure something out," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. "Ms. Kim," Jae-hyun said, taking a step closer. He smelled of expensive cologne and something darker, more dangerous. "You have two choices, let me help you, or walk out those doors alone, wearing a wedding dress, with no money and no plan." Yoona's fingers clutched at the beading on her bodice. "And if I accept your help, what's the price?" "Smart girl," he murmured, and this time the smile stayed, predatory and appreciative. "For now, I'm offering you sanctuary, nothing more." A commotion from the reception hall drew their attention. Raised voices echoed down the corridor, her ex-fiancé's distinct tone carrying above the others. Jae-hyun's expression hardened, his hand moving to the small of her back. "Time to choose, Ms. Kim." Yoona glanced between the approaching voices and the exit Jae-hyun was steering her toward. Her mother had always warned her about making decisions in the heat of emotion, but right now, emotion was all she had. Humiliation burned in her chest, anger coursed through her veins, and beneath it all, a desperate need to disappear from this nightmare. "Fine," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Lead the way, Mr. Kang." His hand pressed more firmly against her back as he guided her toward a private elevator. Two men in dark suits materialized from nowhere, taking flanking positions. Yoona recognized them for what they were. Not hotel security, but Jae-hyun's personal guards. The elevator doors slid open silently, and Jae-hyun ushered her inside. As they began to ascend, Yoona caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her carefully styled hair was coming loose, dark tendrils framing a face flushed with anger and fear. The wedding dress she'd spent months altering to fit her curves now felt like a costume in a play gone horribly wrong. "Your ex-fiancé," Jae-hyun said, breaking the tense silence, "is a fool." Yoona let out a bitter laugh. "Because he humiliated himself at your hotel? Because he had something precious and threw it away?" His dark eyes met hers in the reflection, intense and unreadable. "I don't make such mistakes." The elevator continued its smooth ascent, and Una felt her world tilting on its axis. In the space of an hour, she'd gone from bride to runaway, from a simple life, to standing next to one of Seoul's most dangerous men. The worst part? She couldn't tell if the fluttering in her stomach was fear or excitement. "Where are we going?" she asked, watching the floor numbers climb higher. "The penthouse suite," Jae-hyun replied. "You'll be safe there while we decide our next move." "Our next move?" Una turned to face him directly. "Mr. Kang, I appreciate the rescue, but I'm not some damsel who needs—" "Ms. Kim," he cut her off, his voice gentle but firm. "You're now under my protection. That means certain things will change. Your safety is my priority." The elevator chimed softly as it reached the top floor. Una stood frozen, watching as Jae-hyun extended his hand to her. His fingers were long and elegant, but she could see the faint scars across his knuckles, evidence of a violence she couldn't begin to imagine. "Trust me," he said, and it wasn't quite a request. Una looked at his offered hand, knowing this moment would define everything that followed. She was no fool. Accepting his help meant entering a world she'd only heard whispered about in news reports and late-night stories. But something in the way he looked at her, like she was valuable, precious even, made her reach out and place her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and the elevator doors opened to reveal a world of luxury she'd never imagined. As Una stepped into the penthouse, she could feel the weight of Jae-hyun's gaze on her back, and she wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or possibly the best decision she'd ever made. The sleek black Mercedes glided through Seoul's neon-lit streets, its bulletproof windows creating a barrier between Una and the outside world. She sat rigidly in the butter-soft leather seat, her wedding dress pooling around her like a deflated dream. The privacy partition separated them from the driver, leaving her alone with Seoul's most feared man. "Take me home," Una demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "This isn't your problem to solve." Jae-hyun turned his head slightly, his profile sharp against the passing city lights. "Your ex-fiancé's family has connections to rival organizations. The moment you became involved with my hotel, you became my concern." "I didn't ask for your help." She smoothed her skirts, a nervous habit. "I can handle this myself." "Can you?" His tone was calm, almost bored. "Tell me, Ms. Kim, do you have a safe place to go? Money that isn't tied to your ex-fiancé? A plan that doesn't end with you being harassed by reporters or worse?" Una fell silent, hating that he was right. Her apartment was in her ex's name, her savings mostly spent on the wedding. She'd been so focused on building a future, she hadn't planned for its collapse. "I have friends." "Who will be watched?" he cut in. "The media loves a scandal, especially one involving my business." A flash of light caught her attention. Photographers outside a stoplight. Jae-hyun pressed a button and the windows darkened further. His driver smoothly changed lanes, taking a less obvious route. "I'm not some helpless woman who needs saving," Una insisted, watching him track potential threats through tinted windows. "I have a master's degree in business. I can figure this out." Intelligence isn't the issue. His eyes met hers, dark and intense. "This is about survival. You're now connected to me, whether you like it or not. That makes you a target." The car turned into an underground garage, passing through multiple security checkpoints. Una noticed cameras tracking their movement, armed guards at every post. This wasn't just luxury, it was a fortress. "And what exactly do you expect from me?" she asked, her voice sharp. "What's the price for this supposed protection?" The car stopped, and Jae-hyun's expression hardened. "I don't take advantage of women in vulnerable positions, Ms. Kim, despite what you may have heard about me." A guard opened her door, and Una stepped out, her wedding heels clicking on polished concrete. The garage was immaculate, housing a collection of luxury vehicles that probably cost more than her entire life savings. Jae-hyun led her to a private elevator, his hand hovering near her back without touching. 2 guards flanked them, their earpieces quietly buzzing with security updates. The elevator required both a keycard and fingerprint scan. "This is insane," Una muttered, watching the floor numbers climb. "I don't belong in your world." "You're safer here than anywhere else in Seoul tonight." The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, revealing a space that made her wedding venue look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline, while modern art worth millions adorned the walls. Everything spoke of power and wealth, from the Italian marble floors to the subtle security cameras disguised as lighting fixtures. "The guest suite is this way," Jae-hyun said, leading her down a hallway. "You'll find everything you need inside. My staff can assist with any additional requirements." Yuna entered the room, momentarily stunned by its luxury. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in silk sheets that probably cost more than her monthly salary. A walk-in closet stood open, already stocked with designer clothing in her size. "You planned this," she accused, turning to face him. "How long have you been watching me?" "I make it my business to know everything that happens in my territory." His expression remained neutral. "Rest. We'll discuss your situation in the morning." "And if I try to leave?" "The elevator won't respond to unauthorized guests." He paused at the doorway. "It's for your protection, Miss Kim. Nothing more." Yuna waited until the door closed before sinking onto the bed, her wedding dress crumpling around her. Through the windows, she could see Seoul sprawling below, beautiful and dangerous. She was trapped in a gilded cage, protected by a man whose very name made people tremble. She moved to the closet, fingers trailing over silk blouses and tailored pants that fit her curves perfectly. Even her preferred brands were present. The bathroom held her exact shade of foundation, her favorite perfume. This level of detail wasn't just protection, it was possession. Frustration built in her chest as she paced the room. Every luxury item reminded her of her powerlessness. The door wasn't locked, it didn't need to be. The security system, the guards, the very height of the penthouse itself created an inescapable prison. Yuna caught her reflection in a full-length mirror. A bride without a wedding, a businesswoman without a business, a prisoner in a palace. She'd traded one cage for another, and she wasn't sure which was worse, the public humiliation she'd fled or the private captivity she'd entered. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, teasing her with their distance. Somewhere out there, her old life was imploding. Scandals were brewing, and she was helpless to control any of it. In here, she was safe but trapped, protected but powerless. She yanked at her veil, letting it fall to the marble floor. The woman in the mirror stared back, defiant despite her circumstances. She might be stuck here, but she refused to be broken by it. Jae-hyun Kang might control her environment, but he didn't control her. Yuna sank into a plush armchair, her mind racing with possibilities and finding no solutions. Every exit was blocked, every escape route monitored. She was in the lair of Seoul's most dangerous man, and for now at least, she had no choice but to play by his rules. Yuna yanked the wedding veil from her hair, tossing it onto a nearby chair. Her fingers trembled as she unpinned her elaborate updo, dark strands falling around her shoulders. The guest room's massive walk-in closet mocked her with its perfectly curated selection of designer clothes, all in her size, all in her preferred styles. "This is insane," she muttered, pacing the length of the room. Her wedding dress rustled with each step, the fabric now feeling like a costume rather than the dream gown she'd chosen months ago. The city lights twinkled beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, but they offered no comfort. She jumped at the sound of the door opening, her heart racing as Jae-hyun entered without knocking. He'd loosened his tie, but otherwise looked as immaculate as he had at the wedding. His presence filled the room, making it feel smaller despite its generous proportions. "Your security detail is in place," he announced, his voice cool and measured. "The building's surveillance has been upgraded, and you'll have 2 personal guards assigned to you at all times." "I don't need guards," Yuna snapped, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What I need is to go home." "That's not possible right now." He moved closer, and Yuna forced herself not to step back. "Your ex-fiancé's family has connections that make your current situation delicate." "Delicate?" She laughed bitterly. "Let's be honest about what you are. You're a criminal, Jae-hyun Kang. Everyone knows it, even if they're too afraid to say it to your face." His expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Would you prefer I left you to their mercy?" "I can handle myself. Like you handled yourself at the wedding." His words cut deep, and Yuna flinched. "You have no idea what they're capable of. What I'm capable of." Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with tension. Yuna's skin prickled with awareness. Fear mixed with something else, something that made her pulse quicken. Jaehyun's gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second before returning to her eyes. "You can't keep me here," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I can, and I will." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "Your safety is my priority now, whether you like it or not." "And what about what I want?" Yuna challenged, tilting her chin up defiantly. "Or do criminals like you not care about such things?" His jaw tightened. "You're upset." We'll discuss this when you're thinking more clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, she insisted. You're the one who's not making sense. Why do you care what happens to me? Why go to all this trouble? Instead of answering, Jae-hyun turned toward the closet. You'll find everything you need here. If anything is missing, tell the staff. Stop avoiding my questions. He paused at the door, his broad shoulders tense. Get some rest, Ms. Kim. Tomorrow will be challenging. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Yoona immediately tried the handle. It turned easily. He hadn't locked her in, but she knew that didn't matter. The entire penthouse was a cage, albeit a luxurious one. She locked the door herself, needing at least the illusion of control. Her wedding dress felt suffocating now, and she struggled with the tiny buttons down the back. Tears of frustration pricked at her eyes as she finally managed to step out of it, letting it pool on the floor like discarded dreams. In the closet, she found silk pajamas that fit perfectly. The fabric felt like a whisper against her skin, probably worth more than her monthly rent. Everything in this room screamed wealth and power, from the Egyptian cotton sheets to the hand-painted Chinese vase in the corner. Yoona caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror as she washed away her wedding makeup. Her face looked different somehow. Harder, more wary. In just a few hours, she'd gone from bride to captive, from an independent businesswoman to a protected asset. She thought about her apartment, her job, her friends. Would anyone even know where to look for her? Would they dare to look, knowing she was under Jae-hyun Kang's protection? The word felt bitter in her mind. Protection meant control, and control meant power. The city spread out below her window, like a glittering tapestry. Somewhere out there, her old life was falling apart. Her phone had been confiscated, for security reasons, cutting her off from everyone she knew. She was alone in this gilded prison, with only her thoughts and fears for company. Exhaustion hit her suddenly, the adrenaline of the day finally wearing off. She sank onto the edge of the king-sized bed, its softness offering little comfort. The sheets smelled of lavender and something else, something expensive and subtle that probably cost more than her car. Soul's lights twinkled mockingly through the windows, so close yet completely out of reach. She was trapped here, in this beautiful cage, under the watchful eye of a man who commanded fear with his mere presence, a man who made her pulse race with equal parts fear and something else she refused to name. Yoona hugged her knees to her chest, feeling small against the vast cityscape before her. The bed was positioned to showcase the view, but now it felt like another reminder of her captivity. Beautiful, expensive, and completely beyond her control. Her wedding day had turned into a nightmare, but not the one she'd expected. Instead of public humiliation, she'd found herself ensnared in a world of power, danger, and unspoken threats. A world where a man like Jae-hyun Kang could simply decide to protect her, and no one would dare question it. The night stretched out before her, dark and uncertain. She remained perched on the edge of the bed, watching the city lights blur through tears she refused to shed. This room, this building, this man, they all represented a life she never wanted, a world she never asked to enter. Sunlight pierced through the floor-to-ceiling windows, rousing Yoona from a fitful sleep. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The silk sheets and unfamiliar ceiling, a stark reminder of yesterday's events. The bed was almost too comfortable, making her want to sink back into its embrace and pretend none of this was real. A soft knock at the door made her sit up. Ms. Kim, your breakfast is ready. She found a plush robe hanging in the closet and wrapped it around herself before opening the door. Two suited men stood outside, bodyguards, she realized, their faces expressionless as they gestured toward the dining room. The penthouse looked different in daylight. Everything gleamed with quiet opulence, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork that probably cost more than her entire life savings. The guards maintained a respectful distance as she padded across the cool floor. The dining room took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul, morning sun painting the city gold. A spread worthy of a five-star hotel waited at the table, fresh fruit, pastries, traditional Korean dishes, and coffee that smelled like heaven. Good morning, Ms. Kim. Jae-hyun's voice came from behind her, making her jump. He moved like a cat, silent and graceful despite his imposing presence. I trust you slept well? As well as one can sleep while being held captive, she replied, proud that her voice didn't shake. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're not a captive. You're under protection. Is there a difference? Yes. He pulled out a chair for her. A significant one. Yuna sat, conscious of his proximity as he pushed in her chair. His cologne tickled her senses. Subtle, expensive, dangerous. He took the seat across from her, his dark eyes watching as she reached for the coffee. "There's something you should know," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "News of yesterday's events has spread. Several interested parties now see you as a potential weakness in my organization." The coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "What does that mean?" "It means there are people who would use you to get to me." His jaw tightened. "Which is why you cannot leave this penthouse without security." A server appeared silently, pouring more coffee and disappearing just as quickly. Yuna noticed how everyone moved around Jae-hyun, efficiently, quietly, with a mix of respect and fear. "Within these walls, you have complete freedom," he continued. "The gym, the pool, the library, all yours. But outside, you follow my rules without question. And if I don't?" His eyes met hers, dark and intense. "Then I can't guarantee your safety." Yuna picked up her chopsticks, needing something to do with her hands. "You make it sound like I'm important to you." Something flickered in his expression, too quick to read. "You are interesting." The word hung between them, charged with unspoken meaning. Yuna focused on her food, trying to ignore how his presence seemed to fill the room. She watched him from under her lashes as he read something on his phone, his strong profile highlighted by the morning sun. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. 3 men in expensive suits entered, bowing deeply to Jae-hyun. They spoke rapidly in Korean, their tones urgent. Yuna understood enough to catch mentions of territory disputes and rival families. Jae-hyun's transformation was immediate and chilling. His face became a mask of cold authority, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The men seemed to shrink under his gaze, sweat beading on their foreheads despite the cool air conditioning. One word from him sent them scrambling away. Yuna sat frozen, suddenly understanding why people feared him. This wasn't just some wealthy businessman. This was a man who held life and death in his hands. "Sorry for the interruption," he said, his voice returning to its earlier smoothness. "Business never sleeps." "Is that what you call it? Business?" "Everything is business, Ms. Kim." He reached for his coffee, his sleeve pulling back to reveal an expensive watch. "Even protection." "And what business are you really protecting me from?" she challenged, forgetting her fear for a moment. His eyes traveled over her face, lingering on her lips before meeting her gaze. "Everything," he said softly. "And everyone." More people arrived throughout the morning. All men, all desperate for Jae-hyun's attention. They barely glanced at Yuna, as if looking at her might offend their boss. She watched him work, fascinated despite herself by how he commanded respect with just a gesture or a word. By late morning, she retreated to her room, needing space to think. The sun had climbed higher, filling the space with warm light that couldn't touch the cold fear in her stomach. She understood now. She wasn't just under Jae-hyun's protection. She was under his power. His world was one of sharp edges hidden beneath silk and steel, where a single word could mean fortune or ruin. And she was caught in it, as surely as a butterfly in a spider's web. The luxury around her felt less like comfort now and more like chains. Beautiful golden chains that bound her to this dangerous man and his dangerous world. Through the windows, Seoul continued its busy morning, oblivious to the power plays and silent threats happening in this penthouse in the sky. Somewhere out there, unknown enemies were already plotting to use her against the man who now controlled her life. The same man who made her pulse race when he looked at her, who terrified and intrigued her in equal measure. The sun spilled across her bed, warming the silk sheets she'd slept in. Such a simple comfort in a world that had suddenly become incredibly complicated. Yuna stood at the window, watching the city below, aware that her life had changed irrevocably. The dangers were real, but so was the strange pull she felt toward Jae-hyun, a pull that frightened her more than any external threat. The afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private gym, casting long shadows across the training mats. Yuna tugged at the hem of her borrowed workout clothes, feeling exposed despite the modest cut. The black leggings and fitted top belonged to one of Jae-hyun's female staff members, but they felt foreign on her curves. "Miss Kim," a deep voice called. A tall man in tactical gear approached, his stance professional but non-threatening. "I'm Minho, head of security. Mr. Kang has assigned me to begin your self-defense training." Yuna's eyes darted to where Jae-hyun stood in the doorway, his presence commanding even in casual clothing. He gave a slight nod, arms crossed as he leaned against the frame. I don't need, she began. You do, Jae-hyun cut in, his tone brooking no argument. Start with the basics, Minho. Minho demonstrated the proper stance, and Yoona reluctantly mimicked his position. Her muscles protested as she held the unfamiliar pose, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent. Your center of gravity is different, Minho explained, adjusting her posture. Use it to your advantage. Lower your stance slightly. Yoona wobbled, frustration building as she struggled to maintain balance. From the corner of her eye, she caught Jae-hyun watching intently, his expression unreadable. Now, the first thing to remember is that size doesn't matter as much as technique, Minho continued. When someone grabs you from behind, like this, Yoona interrupted, analyzing the demonstration. So, I should shift my weight too. Yes, exactly. Minho's eyebrows rose slightly, impressed by her quick understanding. The movement comes from your hips, not your arms. They practiced the basic escape moves repeatedly. Sweat began to bead on Yoona's forehead, but she refused to quit. Each time Minho demonstrated a new technique, she asked pointed questions, breaking down the mechanics. Your mind is your greatest weapon, Jae-hyun spoke suddenly, pushing off the doorframe and approaching. You're already using it well. His praise, though subtle, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. Yoona quickly focused back on Minho's instructions, trying to ignore how Jae-hyun's presence seemed to charge the air around her. Let's try a practical application, Minho suggested. I'll come at you slowly, and you... Yoona executed the move before he finished speaking, using her lower center of gravity to break his hold. The surprise on Minho's face was satisfying, but not as much as the quiet chuckle from Jae-hyun. Again, Jae-hyun commanded, moving closer. But this time, remember to protect your core. His hands ghosted over her sides, positioning her arms correctly. The touch was light, professional, but Yoona's skin tingled where his fingers had been. She forced herself to concentrate on Minho's next attack. For the next hour, they worked through various scenarios. Yoona's muscles burned, and her breathing grew heavy, but determination kept her going. She absorbed every detail, from the angle of escape moves to the pressure points that could disable an attacker. You're a natural strategist, Minho commented after she successfully countered a complex hold. Most beginners rely on strength alone. She sees patterns, Jae-hyun added, his dark eyes studying her with something like approval. Weaknesses, opportunities. Yoona straightened, pushing damp hair from her face. I've spent my life analyzing situations, finding ways to adapt. This isn't so different. Something shifted in Jae-hyun's expression, a flash of understanding, perhaps even respect. He stepped onto the mat, dismissing Minho with a gesture. Show me what you've learned, he said softly. Yoona's heart hammered as she faced him. This close, she could see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the subtle lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and heavy decisions. He moved without warning, swift but controlled. Yoona reacted instinctively, using the techniques she'd just learned. Her execution wasn't perfect, but she managed to slip from his grasp. Good, he murmured, circling her slowly. But you hesitated. In real danger, hesitation could get me killed, she finished, tracking his movement. I know. He lunged again, this time catching her arm. Instead of fighting his strength, Yoona used her weight to drop and pivot, breaking free exactly as Minho had taught her. Better. Was that pride in his voice? Your body is learning to trust its instincts. They continued this dance of attack and defense, each movement teaching her something new. Jae-hyun's corrections were gentle but firm, his hands steady when demonstrating proper form. The sun began to set, painting the gym in orange and gold. Yoona's muscles trembled, with exhaustion, but she felt strangely energized. There was power in this knowledge, in understanding how to protect herself. Enough for today, Jae-hyun finally said, noting her fatigue. You've exceeded expectations. Yoona collapsed onto the mat, chest heaving. The cool surface felt heavenly against her overheated skin. Her mind raced with everything she'd learned, not just about self-defense, but about the man who'd ordered her training. She'd seen glimpses of something beyond the cold crime boss today. The patience in his instruction, the subtle encouragement in his words, the careful way he'd pulled his strength during their practice. It all spoke of a complexity she hadn't expected. Lying there, watching the sunset paint shadows across the ceiling, Yoona felt the familiar fear of her situation, mixed with something new. Curiosity about the man who could command terror with a look, yet teach with such measured gentleness. Rest, Jae-hyun said, tossing her a towel. Tomorrow will be harder. Yoona didn't move, her muscles protesting even the thought of standing. The mat recorded her body's impression, a temporary mark of her determination. Her breath gradually steadied, but her mind continued to whirl with questions about the dangerous world she'd entered, and the even more dangerous man at its center. The penthouse dining room gleamed with understated luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the dark mahogany table where Jae-hyun's lieutenants gathered for dinner. Yoona smoothed her dress, painfully aware of being the only woman among these dangerous men. "Miss Kim?" Sang-min, Jae-hyun's second-in-command, nodded respectfully. "I trust your training went well today?" Before she could answer, a server placed an elegant dish of japchae before her. The sweet potato noodles steamed invitingly, but Yoona's appetite vanished when she noticed the tension in Jae-hyun's jaw. "There's been movement at the docks," reported another lieutenant, Young-hoon. His scarred hands gripped a tablet. "The golden dragons are getting bold." Jae-hyun's chopsticks clicked against his bowl. "How bold?" "They left this." Jung-hoon slid a photo across the table. Yoona caught a glimpse of a blood-red dragon painted on a shipping container before Jae-hyun's hand covered it. "They're testing boundaries," Sang-min muttered. "Ever since word got out about—" His eyes flicked to Yoona. She set down her chopsticks. "About me? Don't stop on my account. I'd rather know what danger I'm in." The lieutenants exchanged glances. Jae-hyun's expression remained neutral, but his eyes darkened. "This isn't your concern." "Isn't it?" Yoona challenged, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm already involved. These threats? They're partly because of me, aren't they?" A heavy silence fell over the table. Jae-hyun's men watched their boss, waiting for his reaction to her defiance. "The golden dragons," Jae-hyun finally said, "think I've shown weakness by protecting you. They believe they can use you to provoke me." "And have they?" Yoona met his gaze. "Provoked you?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "They've made a grave miscalculation." The threat in his voice sent shivers down her spine, but Yoona pressed on. "I won't be a passive pawn in this game. If I'm a target, I deserve to know why." One of the younger lieutenants snorted. "You think knowing will help? The streets don't care about—" "Enough." Jae-hyun's quiet command cut through the air like a blade. "Miss Kim has shown more courage than most men I know. She's earned the right to speak." Yoona felt a flutter of triumph, quickly tempered by the gravity in his next words. "But courage alone won't keep you alive out there." He gestured to the city lights beyond the windows. "This isn't a game where clever words win, the rules are written in blood, and mercy is seen as weakness." "Then teach me the rules," Yoona insisted. "I'm already learning to defend myself physically. Let me understand the rest." Sang-min leaned forward. "Boss, she has a point. An informed ally is more valuable than a sheltered one." Jae-hyun studied her for a long moment. The dining room fell silent except for the soft clink of silverware and the distant hum of the city below. "The golden dragons control the southern port, he finally said. "They've been pushing north, testing our territory. Your presence here—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "They see you as leverage, a way to prove I've gone soft." "Have you?" Yoona asked boldly. The lieutenants tensed, but Jae-hyun's laugh was genuine, if brief. "You really don't fear me, do you?" "I fear what you represent," she answered honestly, "the violence, the danger. But no, I don't fear you personally. Not anymore." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or fascination. That could be dangerous. "Everything about this situation is dangerous," Yoona countered. "At least let me face it with open eyes." Jae-hyun nodded to Jung-hoon, who began explaining the complex network of alliances and rivalries that shaped Seoul's underworld. Yoona listened intently, asking sharp questions that earned approving looks from the lieutenants. As the evening progressed, she found herself drawn into their world, despite her reservations. The way they discussed territory and honor, loyalty and betrayal. It was like a deadly chess game played across the city. "The dragons aren't just marking territory," she observed, studying the photos they'd shared. "They're trying to force your hand, make you choose between protecting your business interests and—" She trailed off, realizing the implications. "And protecting you," Jae-hyun finished. "Yes, they think I'll have to choose." "Will you?" His answer was immediate and absolute. "No, I protect what's mine, all of it." The possession in his voice should have angered her, but instead, it sent warmth coursing through her veins. The dinner continued, but Yoona barely tasted the exquisite food, too caught up in the dangerous dance of power and strategy unfolding around her. Later, in her room, Yuna stood at the window, watching Seoul's lights twinkle below. The city looked different now that she understood more of its hidden currents. Somewhere out there, enemies were plotting, seeing her as a weakness in Jae-hyun's armor. But they were wrong. She refused to be just a vulnerability, a damsel to be protected. The way Jae-hyun had supported her speaking up, how his men had gradually included her in their discussions, it hinted at a different possibility. Her reflection in the glass showed someone changed from the woman who'd fled her wedding. The fear was still there, a constant companion in this new life, but it was joined by something else, a thrill of being part of something bigger, more complex than she'd ever imagined. And then there was Jae-hyun himself, the way he'd looked at her when she challenged him, that mix of admiration and warning in his eyes. It stirred something in her that she wasn't ready to name. Yuna touched the cool glass, tracing the outline of the city that had become both her prison and her stage. In just days, her world had transformed from the simple concerns of a bride-to-be to the intricate dangers of a mafia empire. The strange part was, despite everything, she felt more alive than ever. Yuna tossed in her silk sheets, sleep evading her despite the late hour. The city lights cast shifting shadows across her ceiling, and her mind raced with everything she'd learned at dinner. Territory wars, complex alliances, the constant threat of violence. It was so far from her old life of academic pursuits and social obligations. A soft knock broke through her thoughts. Before she could answer, the door opened, and Jae-hyun's silhouette appeared in the doorway. He wore casual clothes, a black t-shirt and loose pants, making him look almost normal, if not for the unmistakable power that radiated from his presence. "You should be sleeping," he said quietly. "So should you." Yuna sat up, pulling the covers around her. "Is something wrong?" He moved to the window, his reflection overlapping the city lights. "I saw your light on. Wanted to make sure you were adjusting. That's not why you're here." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "No, it's not." He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. "What you said at dinner about facing things with open eyes, it reminded me of someone." Yuna stayed silent, sensing the weight of what was coming. "My sister," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "She was like you, brave, stubborn, refused to look away from ugly truths." He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "She died because I wasn't ruthless enough then, because I thought honor and negotiation could solve everything." "What happened?" Yuna asked softly. "Rival family took her, said they wanted to talk terms." His hands clenched. "By the time I got there, they'd already—" He broke off, the memory clearly still raw. "I learned that day. Mercy gets the people you love killed." Yuna slipped out of bed, drawn to his pain despite herself. She stood beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "Is that why you took me from the wedding? To protect me?" He turned to her, his eyes intense. "At first. But now—" His hand rose to her face, hovering just shy of touching. "Now I don't know anymore." The air between them crackled with tension. Yuna's heart hammered against her ribs as his fingers finally made contact, tracing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "I should terrify you," he murmured. "You do," she admitted. "But not in the way you think." His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. Yuna's breath caught as she felt the solid warmth of his chest against hers. This close, she could see the faint scar above his eyebrow, smell the subtle cologne on his skin. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his lips inches from hers. Instead, Yuna lifted her face to his. The kiss started soft, almost hesitant, so different from his usual controlled demeanor. Then something snapped. His hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head back as the kiss deepened. Heat flooded through her body, desire warring with the rational part of her brain that screamed about danger. She gasped when his teeth grazed her lower lip, and he immediately pulled back, breathing hard. His eyes were dark with want, but she saw the effort it took him to maintain control. "We shouldn't," he said roughly, even as his thumb traced circles on her hip. "Because I'm just something else for you to protect?" The challenge in her voice made his eyes flash. "Because once I have you," he growled, "I won't let go, and you're not ready for what that means." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. She pressed closer, feeling the rapid beat of his heart matching hers. "Maybe I'm stronger than you think." His laugh was low and dangerous. "Oh, I know exactly how strong you are." He brushed his lips against her temple. That's what makes you so dangerous. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the line between fear and desire blurring with each breath. Yuna knew she was playing with fire. This man commanded an empire built on violence. He'd killed people, ordered deaths, lived by rules she was only beginning to understand. Yet when his fingers traced down her spine, when his breath hitched at her touch, she saw beyond the ruthless exterior to the wounded man beneath. The one who'd lost his sister, who'd built walls around his heart with blood and steel, who looked at her like she was both salvation and destruction. Finally, Jae-hyun stepped back, though his hands lingered on her waist. Get some sleep, he said, his voice rough. Tomorrow won't be easy. Is anything easy in your world? The ghost of a smile touched his lips. No, but some things. His eyes traveled over her face, intense enough to make her shiver. Some things are worth the challenge. He left as quietly as he'd come, leaving Yuna standing by the window, her lips still tingling from his kiss. She touched them gently, remembering the contrast between his fierce grip and tender touches. How could someone so dangerous make her feel so safe? Back in bed, she stared at the ceiling, her heart still racing. The city hummed outside, a constant reminder of the dangerous world she now inhabited. But for the first time since her wedding day, she didn't feel like a victim of circumstance. Something was building between her and Jae-hyun, something powerful and frightening and thrilling all at once. She touched her neck where his breath had ghosted over her skin, remembering the restraint in his movements, the way he'd held back despite clearly wanting more. It was a kind of power she hadn't expected, the ability to make such a dangerous man tremble with just a touch. Sleep felt impossible now. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his intense gaze, felt the phantom press of his lips. The memory of his confession about his sister haunted her, not just the tragedy itself, but the trust he'd shown in sharing it. In his world, vulnerability was a weapon that could be used against you, yet he'd chosen to let her see that part of himself. Yuna pulled the covers tighter, but couldn't escape the warmth still flooding her body. She was falling for a man who terrorized Seoul's underworld, who had blood on his hands and darkness in his past. And the scariest part wasn't that she was attracted to him despite these things. It was that somehow, impossibly, these aspects of him only made her want him more. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warming Yuna's face as she reached for her phone. Her stomach dropped when she saw the message. A single photo of her walking through the penthouse lobby yesterday, crosshairs edited over her image. Below it, text in Korean. The dragon's new pet looks soft, easy to break. Her hands trembled as she heard rapid footsteps approaching. The door burst open, and Jae-hyun strode in, his face a mask of cold fury. 2 guards flanked him, weapons visible beneath their suits. You've seen it, he asked, his voice clipped. Yuna nodded, gripping her phone tighter. The Young Syndicate. Most likely. He moved to the windows, pressing a button that made bulletproof shutters begin descending. They're testing boundaries. Testing boundaries by threatening me? Yuna's voice rose. I'm not some pawn in your gang war. Jae-hyun turned, his eyes softening fractionally. No, you're not. He gestured to one of the guards. Sweep the entire floor. Again, check everyone's credentials. As the guards departed, Jae-hyun's phone buzzed continuously. He barked orders in Korean, his expression growing darker with each call. Yuna watched him pace, noting how his shoulders tensed with each new piece of information. Someone had to let them into the lobby to take that photo, she said quietly. Jae-hyun paused mid-stride. What? The angle. It's from inside, behind the security desk. Your lobby guards are vetted, right? So either someone got past them, or someone's been turned, he finished, already dialing another number. Within an hour, the penthouse transformed into a command center. Jae-hyun's men brought in suspects for questioning. Nervous-looking security guards, maintenance workers, even a cleaning lady who'd worked there for years. Yuna observed from the kitchen, noting how each person reacted to Jae-hyun's presence. One guard particularly caught her attention. Kim Min-ho, according to his badge. While the others showed clear fear or defiance, he maintained perfect composure. Too perfect. She watched him answer questions smoothly. His story rehearsed, but believable. It wasn't until Jae-hyun mentioned checking security footage that she saw it, the briefest flicker of his eyes toward his jacket pocket. Yuna moved closer to Jae-hyun, touching his arm lightly. He tensed, then leaned down as she whispered. His left pocket. He keeps checking it, and his shoes are expensive. Too expensive for his salary. Jae-hyun's expression didn't change, but his next question shifted subtly. Within minutes, Minho broke. A burner phone fell from his pocket as Jae-hyun's men grabbed him. The screen showed recent messages to Young Territory. "Take him downstairs," Jae-hyun ordered, his voice promising consequences Yoona didn't want to imagine. As guards dragged the struggling man away, Jae-hyun turned to Yoona. "How did you know?" "People reveal themselves in small ways when they're hiding something. I've spent my whole life watching how people react to me, learning to read what they're really thinking behind their polite smiles." Something flickered in Jae-hyun's eyes, respect perhaps, or understanding, but it was quickly replaced by determination as he assessed the situation. "The penthouse isn't secure enough now. You'll need to stay in the private wing until we handle this." He led her through a hidden door she hadn't noticed before, revealing a luxurious suite of rooms. Full security, separate ventilation system, reinforced walls. "A gilded cage is still a cage," Yoona protested, even as she noted the elegant furnishings and state-of-the-art security features. "A cage that keeps you alive." His hand brushed her cheek, so gentle it made her breath catch. "I won't risk you." The tenderness in his touch contrasted sharply with the cold efficiency she'd witnessed during the interrogations. This man could order death with a word, yet he handled her like she might shatter. Hours passed in the secure wing. Yoona paced, trying to ignore the sounds of Jae-hyun's operation beyond the walls. Occasionally his voice carried through, sharp commands, terse phone calls, the constant motion of a man protecting his territory. She found herself drawn to the windows, watching Seoul spread out below. The city looked deceptively peaceful from this height, but she knew better now. Beneath the gleaming surface lurked shadows and danger, power struggles and violence. And somehow, she'd become entangled in all of it. A message from her former fiancé flashed across her mind, his cruel words at the wedding seeming almost quaint now compared to actual death threats. She'd traded one form of danger for another, but at least this one came with a protector who valued her mind as much as he guarded her body. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor as Yoona stood at the window. She pressed her palm against the bulletproof glass, feeling its solid strength. Beyond it, Seoul continued its daily rhythm, oblivious to the power plays and threats swirling around this tower. In the reflection, she caught a glimpse of herself. No longer the humiliated bride, but someone stronger, someone who could spot a traitor and hold her own in this dangerous new world. The question was, could she survive it without losing herself in the process? Heavy footsteps approached behind her, and she knew without turning that it was Jae-hyun. His presence filled the room, powerful and protective. She stayed at the window, watching his reflection draw nearer, understanding now that she wasn't just hiding from enemies. She was at the center of a storm that would either destroy her or transform her completely. The secure wing felt suffocating by mid-afternoon. Yoona paced the luxurious space, her mind racing with the morning's events. The mole's capture should have made her feel safer, but instead, it highlighted just how trapped she'd become. She noticed one of the cleaning staff, Misun, an older woman who'd shown her kindness since her arrival, entering with fresh towels. Unlike the others, Misun's gentle demeanor and motherly concern had been a comfort in this cold world of marble and steel. "Miss Kim, you look pale. Perhaps some fresh air would help?" Misun suggested, gesturing to a service entrance Yoona hadn't noticed before. "Just 15 minutes in the garden terrace. No one would know." The offer tempted her. 15 minutes of freedom, of normal life. Misun's warm smile convinced her, and against her better judgment, Yoona followed her through the door. The terrace garden was beautiful, filled with carefully maintained flowers and a small koi pond. Yoona breathed deeply, savoring the outdoor air, but her relief was short-lived. 3 men emerged from behind the sculpted bushes. Before Yoona could scream, a cloth pressed against her face. As consciousness faded, she saw Misun step back, her kind face now cold and unfamiliar. She awoke in a dim room that smelled of mold and cigarettes. Her head throbbed, and her wrists were bound to a metal chair. A man in an expensive suit circled her slowly, his shoes clicking against the concrete floor. "So, this is Jae-hyun's new pet," he sneered, grabbing her chin. "The fat girl who caught the dragon's eye. How disappointing." Yoona jerked away from his touch, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "If you're trying to scare me, you'll have to do better than cheap insults about my weight." The man laughed, but his eyes remained cruel. "Oh, we can do much better. Tell me, does Jae-hyun share his secrets with you? His weaknesses? His plans?" "I don't know anything," Yoona spat, earning a sharp slap across her face. "Everyone knows something," he replied, pulling out his phone. Let's see how much you remember when we start sending pieces of you to your precious protector." Fear clawed at her throat, but Yuna forced it down. These men wanted her terror. She wouldn't give it to them easily. Instead, she focused on details: the tang of rust in the air, distant traffic sounds, the way light filtered through high windows. Anything might help her location be found. The door opened, and Misun entered, now dressed in expensive clothes that matched her harder demeanor. "Young-ho wants an update," she announced to the man. "The surveillance photos are ready." Yuna's stomach churned. Misun, the woman who'd brought her tea, who'd listened to her fears, had been gathering intelligence all along. Every conversation, every vulnerable moment had been weaponized against her. "Why?" Yuna asked, hating how her voice cracked. Misun's smile was pitying. "Money, dear. Always money. And revenge. Jae-hyun killed my brother 5 years ago. This seemed fitting, using his new weakness against him." The betrayal hurt more than the ropes cutting into her wrists. Yuna had thought she was learning to navigate this dangerous world, but she'd been blind to the threats right beside her. Hours passed in a haze of threats and mind games. They didn't hurt her physically. Much. Instead, they picked at her insecurities, reminded her of her helplessness, detailed exactly how they planned to use her against Jae-hyun. "He'll come for me," Yuna said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Oh, we're counting on it, Muriram." The man smiled. "The great Jae-hyun Kong, rushing in to save his fat little princess. But will he reach you in time? Will he care enough to pay the price we demand?" Yuna closed her eyes, remembering Jae-hyun's touch that morning, gentle despite his deadly nature. She clung to that memory as her captors continued their psychological torment. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. Footsteps echoed, then shouting. Her captors tensed, drawing weapons. Misun's face paled as she checked her phone. "He's found us already," she whispered. "How did he—" The man cursed, grabbing Yuna's arm roughly. "Move her deeper inside. Now!" As they dragged her from the chair, Yuna caught glimpses of chaos through the windows. Black SUVs surrounded the building, men in tactical gear moved with lethal precision, and at the center of it all, she saw him. Jae-hyun, his usual elegant suit replaced by combat. Gear, his face promising violence. The sound of gunfire filled the air as they forced her down a corridor. Yuna stumbled, her bound legs making it difficult to walk. Her captors argued in harsh whispers about escape routes and backup plans. Misun's grip on her arm tightened painfully. "This wasn't supposed to happen so fast. He was supposed to negotiate first." "Shut up and move," the man ordered, checking corners as they descended deeper into the building. The gunfire grew closer. Yuna could hear the steady advancement of Jae-hyun's forces, professional, methodical, unstoppable. Her captors' fear was palpable now, their earlier confidence evaporating with each passing minute. They reached a heavy metal door, but before they could open it, the lights went out. Emergency batteries kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. The building's security systems were being systematically disabled. "He's cutting off our escape routes," Misun realized, her voice shaking. "He's hunting us." The man pushed Yuna against a wall, pressing a gun to her temple. "Maybe we should just finish this now, send him a message he'll never forget." Yuna held perfectly still, heart thundering in her chest. Through her fear, she heard it, the subtle sound of someone moving in the darkness beyond the emergency lights. Her captors were so focused on the noises in front of them, they didn't notice the danger approaching from behind. A single gunshot echoed through the corridor. The man holding Yuna jerked, his weapon clattering to the floor. More shots followed, precise and devastating. Misun screamed, the sound cut short by another burst of gunfire. Through the chaos, Yuna caught a glimpse of Jae-hyun's face, illuminated by the red emergency lights. His expression was terrifying, cold fury mixed with something else, something possessive and protective that made her breath catch. The red emergency lights cast grotesque shadows as Jae-hyun moved through the building with lethal grace. His men had secured the perimeter, but inside it was just him, hunting. Every footstep was measured, every movement precise. The gun in his hand felt like an extension of his body. Yuna's bonds had been cut, and she stayed close behind him, her breathing controlled despite her fear. Her captors' bodies lay cooling on the floor behind them. "There's another security station ahead," she whispered, remembering the layout from her earlier forced tour. "They showed it off, thinking I was too scared to pay attention." Jae-hyun's lips curved slightly. Even now, she impressed him with her sharp mind. "How many guards?" "2 monitors, 3 doors." She closed her eyes, visualizing. "The main console faces east. They'll see us coming unless we don't use the main entrance," he finished. Their eyes met in the dim light, understanding passing between them. They moved silently through the maze of corridors. Yuna's heart thundered in her chest, but her mind stayed focused. She'd watched everything during her captivity, every guard rotation, every casual conversation about security protocols. "Wait!" She grabbed his arm, pointing to a barely visible wire near the floor. They mentioned tripwires in the west corridor. Jae-hyun's hand covered hers for a moment, warm and steady. "Good girl," he murmured, the praise sending an inappropriate shiver down her spine despite their dangerous situation. They navigated around the trap, and Yuna led them to a service entrance she'd spotted earlier. Inside the security station, voices argued about escape routes and backup plans. Jae-hyun positioned himself, then nodded to Yuna. She understood without words. "Stay back. Stay safe." The next moments passed in a blur of gunfire and shouting. Jae-hyun moved like a deadly shadow, each shot finding its mark. When silence fell, he immediately returned to her side, his hand sliding possessively to her lower back. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, eyes scanning her face. "No, Yuna's voice caught as his fingers brushed her cheek, checking a small cut from earlier. The touch was gentle, at odds with the violence he'd just delivered. "I should have protected you better," he said, voice low and intense. "This won't happen again." Their faces were close in the dim light. Yuna could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the gunpowder and expensive cologne that clung to his skin. The adrenaline made everything sharper, more immediate. "We need to move," he said finally, though his hand lingered on her face. "There are still threats to eliminate." They proceeded through the building, Yuna providing crucial intelligence about guard positions and security measures. Her captors had underestimated her, treating her like a helpless pawn. Now their arrogance would be their downfall. At one point, they encountered heavy resistance. Jae-hyun pushed her behind a concrete pillar, shielding her with his body as bullets flew. She clutched his tactical vest, feeling the solid strength of him, the controlled power in every movement as he returned fire. "The elevator shaft," she said between bursts of gunfire. "They mentioned a panic room 2 floors down. That's where the leaders will be." Jae-hyun's arm tightened around her waist. "You're remarkable," he murmured. And even in the middle of a firefight, the praise made her flush. They found the elevator shaft, and Jae-hyun quickly rigged climbing gear. Yuna wrapped her arms around his neck as they descended, trying to ignore how intimate it felt to be pressed against him this way. His breathing remained steady, but she could feel his heart racing, matching her own. The panic room's security was sophisticated, but not impenetrable. Yuna remembered details from overheard conversations, the backup generator's location, the override codes they'd discussed so carelessly. Working together, they bypassed the defenses. Inside, they found the rival gang's leadership, including the man who'd orchestrated her kidnapping. Jae-hyun's expression turned arctic as he surveyed the room. "Get her out," he ordered one of his men who'd joined them. "Now!" "Jae-hyun!" Yuna started, but he turned to her, eyes softening slightly. "Please," he said quietly. "Let me finish this. I'll come for you soon." Something in his tone made her shiver. She allowed herself to be led away, hearing the first screams begin as the door closed behind her. 20 minutes later, they were in his armored car, speeding through Seoul's nighttime streets. Jae-hyun had changed back into one of his impeccable suits, all evidence of violence erased except for a dangerous gleam in his eyes. Yuna sat close to him, still processing everything that had happened. Her body hummed with residual adrenaline and something else, something that had to do with the way he kept looking at her, intense and possessive. "You were incredible in there," he said softly. "Brave, smart, perfect." His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining. The touch sent electricity through her veins. She knew she should pull away, should remember who and what he was. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. "I thought," her voice wavered. "When they first took me, I thought maybe you wouldn't. I will always come for you." His voice was rough with emotion. "Always, Yuna." The city lights played across his features as they drove, highlighting the sharp angles of his face, the darkness in his eyes. He was still the dangerous man who'd commanded such violence tonight, but he was also the man who'd touched her with such gentleness, who'd praised her courage and intelligence. They sat in charged silence as the car wound through empty streets. Yuna felt the weight of everything shifting between them, the fear and adrenaline transforming into something else, something that made her skin prickle with awareness every time he moved. His thumb stroked slowly across her palm, the simple touch making her breath catch. Outside, Seoul's nightscape blurred past, but inside the car, time seemed suspended. Every glance, Every brush of skin against skin carried new meaning. The penthouse grew closer, and with it, the knowledge that tonight had changed everything. They'd seen each other's strength and vulnerability, worked in perfect sync despite the danger. Now, in the aftermath, something new and powerful simmered between them, waiting to ignite. The penthouse felt different when they returned, like the air itself had shifted. Yuna's hands trembled slightly as she pressed an antiseptic wipe to the shallow cut on her forearm, sitting on the edge of the marble bathroom counter. The bright lights highlighted every scrape and bruise, physical reminders of how close she'd come to real danger. Jae-hyun leaned against the doorframe, his tie loosened but otherwise immaculate. He hadn't left her side since they'd arrived home, watching her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "Let me," he said softly, taking the first aid supplies from her shaking fingers. His touch was gentle as he cleaned each small wound, a stark contrast to the lethal efficiency she'd witnessed earlier. "I should have listened to you," Yuna admitted, wincing as he applied antibiotic cream. "About staying in the secure area." "You're stubborn." His lips quirked slightly. "It's one of the things He paused, hands stilling on her arm. "One of the things that draws me to you." Yuna's breath caught at the admission. In the bright bathroom light, she could see the tension in his jaw, the carefully controlled emotion in his dark eyes. "Why did you really take me from the wedding?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jae-hyun's fingers traced the edge of a bruise on her wrist, feather-light. "I told myself it was strategy, that having you would give me an advantage." His voice roughened. "But when I saw him humiliate you, something in me..." He exhaled sharply. "I couldn't bear it. Because I was useful? Because you were magnificent?" His eyes met hers, stripped of their usual coldness. "Standing there in that dress, holding your head high, even as they tried to break you. I've never wanted to protect someone so badly in my life." Heat bloomed in Yuna's chest, spreading through her limbs. She should be afraid of him after tonight, after seeing what he was capable of. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. "I'm not just a possession," she said firmly, even as her pulse raced. "I won't be owned." "No," he agreed, stepping between her knees, one hand coming up to cup her face. "You're so much more. You're brilliant, fearless. You see through every defense I've built." His thumb brushed her cheek. "You make me want things I've never allowed myself to want." Yuna's hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the expensive fabric. "What things?" "Connection, trust." His voice dropped lower. "The right to hold you like this." The air felt thick with tension as they stared at each other. Yuna could feel herself trembling, but not from fear. Her fingers curled into his shirt. "I should be terrified of you," she whispered. "Are you?" She shook her head slowly. "I'm terrified of how much I'm not terrified." Jaehyun's other hand settled on her waist, warm and steady. "When they took you?" Something dark flickered in his eyes. "I've never felt such rage, such fear, the thought of losing you." "I'm here," Yuna said softly, surprising herself by meaning it. "I'm safe." His forehead pressed against hers, eyes closing briefly. "I want to give you everything," he murmured. "Safety, freedom, pleasure, whatever you desire." "And what do you want in return?" "Just you." His fingers threaded through her hair. "Your trust, your fire, your heart if you'll give it to me." Yuna's chest ached with the weight of emotion. "This is crazy," she breathed. "We barely know each other." "I know enough." His lips brushed her temple. "I know you're stronger than anyone I've met. I know you. Challenge me, make me question everything." His mouth traced down to her jaw. "I know I've never felt this way about anyone." She tilted her face up, drawn to him like a magnet. "Show me," she whispered. His kiss was surprisingly gentle, a contrast to his usual intensity. Yuna melted into it, her arms sliding around his neck as he pulled her closer. She could feel the careful restraint in his touch, the way he held back despite clearly wanting more. When they separated, his eyes were dark with desire, but he maintained that careful control. "You need rest," he said softly. "It's been a long day." Yuna nodded, though she didn't move away. "Stay with me?" Something vulnerable flashed across his face. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She pressed her face into his neck, breathing in his scent. "I don't want to be alone tonight." He lifted her easily from the counter, carrying her to the bedroom. They settled onto the silk sheets fully clothed. Yuna curled against his chest as his arms wrapped around her. "Sleep," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I'll keep you safe." Yuna felt the last of her tension drain away as his warmth surrounded her. She knew there would be consequences tomorrow, complications to face. But for now, in this moment, she allowed herself to simply feel safe, wanted, and strangely at peace in the arms of the most dangerous man she'd ever met. His heartbeat was steady under her ear, his breathing deep and even. One hand stroked slowly up and down her back, soothing away the last traces of fear and adrenaline. She felt herself drifting, secure in the knowledge that he would protect her, that his devotion was as real as the strength in his arms. The city lights painted patterns on the ceiling as they lay there, wrapped in comfortable silence. Yuna's eyes grew heavy as exhaustion finally caught up with her. The last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was Jae-hyun's lips pressing softly against her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warming Yuna's face. She stirred slowly, consciousness returning as she registered the empty space beside her where Jae-hyun had been. Voices drifted from beyond the bedroom door, sharp, urgent tones speaking rapid Korean. She dressed quickly in a soft sweater and tailored pants from the wardrobe he'd filled for her, then padded toward the sound. The penthouse's main room had transformed into a command center overnight. Screens displayed surveillance feeds while men in dark suits moved with purpose, reporting to Jae-hyun, who stood at the center of it all. He looked dangerous and powerful in his perfectly fitted black suit, giving orders in that cold, commanding tone she'd come to know. But when his eyes met hers, they softened for just a moment. "Come," he said, extending his hand. "You should hear this." Yuna approached, noting how his lieutenants shifted uncomfortably. They weren't used to seeing their boss show such consideration to anyone. She took his offered hand, allowing him to draw her close. "The Chang Syndicate is moving against our shipping interests," one of the men reported. "They're trying to block our access to the port." Yuna listened carefully, her mind working. "The timing seems wrong," she said suddenly. All eyes turned to her, but she continued, "Why now, when security is heightened after yesterday's incident? Unless it's a distraction," Jae-hyun finished, his grip tightening on her hand. "Min-ho, check our tech facilities. Jun, double the guards at our data centers." His men rushed to comply as Yuna explained her thinking. "They failed to use me as leverage yesterday. Their next logical move would be to attack your infrastructure, while your forces are focused on the port." Jae-hyun's lips curved into a dangerous smile. "Brilliant," he murmured, then turned to his remaining men. "Change of plans. We'll let them think their port strategy is working." As he outlined the new approach, Yuna found herself drawn into the strategic discussion. Her background in business analytics proved unexpectedly useful in this dangerous new world. She pointed out patterns in their rivals' behavior, suggested ways to anticipate their moves. "Your woman has a good head for this," one of the older lieutenants commented, genuine respect in his voice. "She's not just my woman," Jae-hyun corrected sharply. "She's my partner." The declaration sent ripples through the room. Yuna felt the weight of it, understanding that he'd just elevated her status significantly in their hierarchy. Some men looked shocked, others calculating, but none dared question their boss's decision. As the morning progressed, Yuna worked alongside Jae-hyun, helping coordinate their counter-strategy. She watched him switch effortlessly between languages, issuing commands that would reshape the criminal landscape of Seoul. The power he wielded should have frightened her, but instead she felt a thrill of excitement. "You're natural at this," he murmured during a brief moment alone, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. "How do you feel?" "Surprisingly okay," she admitted, "though I probably should be more concerned about how easily I'm adapting to a life of crime." His low chuckle sent shivers down her spine. "You're adapting to power, Jagia. Crime is just the medium." By early afternoon, their trap was set. Reports confirmed the Chang Syndicate had taken the bait, focusing their forces on the port while leaving their real target vulnerable. Jae-hyun's men were already in position to intercept their true attack. "We have the gala tonight," he reminded her as the room cleared. "I want everyone to see you as you truly are, my equal, my queen." Yuna raised an eyebrow. "Is that what I am?" "You're whatever you choose to be," he said seriously. "But yes, to me, you're everything." He summoned his personal stylist, who arrived with an array of designer gowns. As Yuna prepared for the evening, she caught glimpses of herself in the mirror. Gone was the insecure woman from the wedding. In her place stood someone stronger, more confident. The stylist helped her into a deep burgundy gown that hugged her curves perfectly. The color reminded her of wine, of blood, of power. Her makeup was elegant but bold, her hair swept up to expose the graceful line of her neck. "Beautiful," Jae-hyun's voice came from the doorway. He'd changed into a tuxedo that made him look even more devastatingly handsome. "Dangerous," she corrected, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Both." He approached slowly, his hands settling on her waist. "You've embraced this life so completely. Sometimes I wonder if I'm dreaming." Yoona turned to face him, reaching up to straighten his bow tie. "If you are, so am I." She studied his face, seeing past the cold mask to the man beneath. "I never expected this, any of this, but I don't regret it." "No?" His fingers traced her jaw. "Even knowing what I am? What I do?" "I know exactly who you are," she said firmly. "Just like you know who I am. We've seen the worst of each other and we're still here." His kiss was fierce, passionate, but careful not to smudge her lipstick. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with desire and something deeper. "Ready to show Seoul that you're not just surviving in my world, you're ruling it?" Yoona smiled, feeling powerful and radiant and completely alive. "Let's give them something to talk about." The Grand Hyatt's crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow across Seoul's elite as Yoona entered on Jae-hyun's arm. Her burgundy gown swept the marble floor, drawing appreciative glances and envious stares. The whispers that followed weren't about her size anymore, they were about her power. "The Chang family is here," Jae-hyun murmured, his lips barely moving. "Along with the Kims and Parks." Yoona's grip tightened on his arm, but her smile never wavered. "All our favorite people in one room." His low chuckle held no humor. "Stay close." They made their way through the crowd, stopping occasionally to exchange pleasantries. Jae-hyun's presence commanded attention. People practically tripped over themselves to bow and offer respect. But Yoona noticed the calculating looks, the way rival gang members tracked their movements. "Kang Jae-hyun," a silky voice called out. Mr. Chang approached, flanked by two men who were obviously armed despite their expensive suits. "What a pleasure." "Chang." Jae-hyun's voice was ice. "I trust you're enjoying the evening." "Immensely." Chang's eyes slid to Yoona, lingering too long. "And this must be the woman everyone's talking about." "My partner," Jae-hyun corrected sharply. His hand moved to Yoona's lower back, protective and possessive. "Partner?" Chang's smile didn't reach his eyes. "How progressive of you?" Yoona met his gaze directly. "I find traditional hierarchies rather limiting, don't you?" Chang's expression flickered with surprise at her boldness. Before he could respond, a server appeared with champagne. Jae-hyun smoothly intercepted the glasses, handed one to Yoona, and took a sip from his own, a subtle reminder that he checked everything she consumed. "If you'll excuse us," Jae-hyun said coldly, steering Yoona away. They circulated the room, a dangerous dance of politics and power. Yoona observed everything, who spoke to whom, which alliances seemed strained, where the exits were. She caught several women watching her with curiosity, rather than disdain now. "You're making quite an impression," Jae-hyun whispered as they paused near a marble column. "Good or bad?" "Both." His thumb stroked her wrist. "They're realizing you're not just arm candy." The music changed to a waltz. Jae-hyun led her onto the dance floor, his movements precise and controlled. Other couples gave them space, creating an invisible barrier of respect and fear. "Chang's men are getting restless," Yoona murmured as they turned. "Something's wrong." Jae-hyun's expression didn't change, but his body tensed. 3 by the bar, 2 near the exit. 4 by the bar now, they're trying to look casual and failing. He spun her gracefully, using the movement to scan the room. "Well spotted, Jagia." Before Chang's men could make their move, Jae-hyun's security team materialized, strategically positioning themselves around the room. The message was clear. Any attempt at violence would be met with swift retaliation. Chang himself looked furious as he realized his plan had been anticipated and blocked. Jae-hyun's smile was razor-sharp as he guided Yoona past their rival's table, a silent demonstration of dominance. "Come with me," he said suddenly, leading her toward a private alcove hidden behind heavy curtains. The space was intimate, lit only by distant chandelier light filtering through the fabric. Yoona's heart raced as Jae-hyun pressed her against the wall, his body shielding her from view. "You're incredible," he breathed, cupping her face. "Do you know what you do to me? Watching you handle them like you were born to this life." His kiss was hungry, passionate, making her knees weak. Yuna clutched his shoulders, returning the kiss with equal fervor. The danger outside only heightened the intensity between them. "Someone could see," she gasped as his lips traced her neck. "Let them." His voice was rough with desire. "Let them all see that you're mine, that we're unstoppable together." A discreet cough from beyond the curtain interrupted them. "Boss," one of his men called softly. "Chang's leaving. We have eyes on him." Jae-hyun pulled back, straightening his bow tie. Yuna quickly fixed her lipstick, grateful for the long-wear formula. When they emerged, she knew they weren't fooling anyone, but she didn't care. Let them see. Let them understand that their connection went beyond mere possession or protection. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of strategic conversations and careful maneuvering. Yuna found herself engaged in complex discussions about territory and influence, offering insights that earned reluctant respect from even their enemies. "Your woman is quite formidable," Park Jin-ho commented to Jae-hyun, his tone careful. "She is," Jae-hyun agreed proudly. "And she's right here. You can address her directly." Yuna smiled sweetly. "I believe you were about to ask about the shipping routes, Mr. Park." The old gang leader blinked, then laughed genuinely. "Indeed I was. Perhaps we could discuss it over tea sometime." "I'm sure we can arrange something," she replied, feeling Jae-hyun's approval in the slight squeeze of his hand. As the gala wound down, they made their exit with careful timing, not too early to suggest weakness, not too late to risk being cornered. Jae-hyun's security formed a subtle barrier between them and any potential threats. In the back of their armored car, Yuna finally allowed herself to relax. "That was intense," Jae-hyun supplied, pulling her closer. "Exhilarating." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I should probably be worried about how natural this feels." He kissed her temple. "You were born for this life, Jagia. You just needed the right partner to show you." Their car glided through Seoul's glittering streets, the city seeming to bow before them. Yuna laced her fingers through Jae-hyun's, feeling invincible. They had faced down their enemies together, shown their strength as a united front. "Take the long way home," Jae-hyun instructed their driver. To Yuna, he murmured, "I'm not ready to share you with reality just yet." She smiled, understanding completely. In this moment, they were untouchable, the king and queen of their dangerous, beautiful world, riding through their domain hand in hand. The elevator doors opened to their penthouse, the city lights twinkling through floor-to-ceiling windows. Yuna stepped out of her heels, sighing in relief as her feet met the cool marble floor. Jae-hyun's hand rested on her lower back, guiding her inside with the gentleness he reserved only for her. "Tea?" he offered, loosening his bow tie. "Please." She watched him move through their kitchen with familiar ease, his deadly hands now focused on the delicate task of preparing their favorite jasmine blend. The contrast wasn't lost on her, how those same hands that had orchestrated violence hours ago now carefully poured steaming water into ceramic cups. This was their private ritual, these quiet moments where masks fell away and titles meant nothing. "You were magnificent tonight," he said, joining her on their plush sofa. "The way you handled Park Jin-ho, even my most seasoned men were impressed." Yuna accepted the tea, inhaling its soothing aroma. "It feels surreal sometimes. If someone had told me at that wedding that this would be my life." "Ah, the wedding." Jae-hyun's expression darkened briefly. "I wanted to kill him the moment he opened his mouth. I'm glad you didn't." She touched his cheek softly. "Look where we ended up instead." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I knew the moment I saw you, standing there in that white dress, fury in your eyes. You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." "I thought you were terrifying," she admitted with a small laugh. "And now?" "Now." Yuna set down her tea, shifting closer. "Now I know you're still terrifying, but you're also mine." His eyes darkened with desire. "Entirely yours, Jagia." She ran her fingers through his hair, messing up its perfect style. "Remember when I first moved in? I was so scared, so angry." "You threw a vase at my head," he recalled, amused. "You deserved it. You were being impossible. I was trying to keep you safe. By locking me in my room." He had the grace to look sheepish. "I've learned better ways since then." Yuna laughed softly. "Yes, you have. We both have." The city hummed below them, a distant lullaby of traffic and life. In their penthouse sanctuary, time seemed to slow, creating a bubble of peace around them. "Dance with me," Jae-hyun said suddenly, standing and offering his hand. "There's no music." He pulled out his phone, and soft jazz filled the room. Yoona stepped into his arms, letting him lead her in a slow sway. Her evening gown whispered against the floor as they moved. "Do you remember our first dance?" she asked. You were still fighting me then, but I could feel it. How perfectly you fit in my arms." She rested her head on his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. "I was trying so hard not to feel anything for you." "And now?" His voice rumbled beneath her ear. "Now I feel everything." She looked up at him. The good, the bad, the terrifying, the beautiful. All of it. He dipped her suddenly, making her gasp. "Even when I'm impossible?" "Especially then," she laughed as he pulled her back up. Their dance slowed to barely a movement, just holding each other in the dim light. Jae-hyun's hands traced patterns on her back, and Yoona breathed in his familiar scent of sandalwood and power. "You've changed me," he murmured into her hair. "Before you, I only knew how to rule through fear. You showed me there was another way. You changed me too." She traced the line of his jaw. "You helped me find my strength, my voice. Even when I was afraid, you never tried to make me smaller." His arms tightened around her. "You were never meant to be small, Jagia. You were meant to rule." The music faded, but they kept swaying, lost in their own rhythm. Outside, Seoul continued its eternal dance of light and shadow, but here in their sanctuary, nothing existed except them. "I love you," Yoona whispered, the words falling naturally from her lips. "Not despite what you are, but because of who you are with me." Jae-hyun's response was to kiss her, deep and tender, pouring years of loneliness and newfound joy into the contact. When they parted, his eyes held that rare vulnerability that only she was allowed to see. "My queen," he breathed against her lips. "My heart, my everything." She smiled, remembering how those same endearments had once frightened her. Now they felt like coming home. "Take me to bed," she said softly. He lifted her easily, her dress cascading around them like water. As they moved through their home, Yoona traced the scar on his neck, a reminder of how close she'd come to losing him during her rescue. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, laying her gently on their bed. "How far we've come, how much we've survived together." He joined her, propping himself up on one elbow to gaze at her. "And how much more we'll conquer together." Yoona reached up to unbutton his shirt, taking her time. "I never thought I'd find peace in this dangerous world of yours." "Our world now," he corrected, helping her with the buttons. "You've made it better, brighter." She smiled as his shirt fell away. "We've made each other better." The city lights painted patterns across their skin as clothing gave way to tender touches and whispered devotion. Every kiss was a promise, every caress a reminder of their journey from fear to trust, from obsession to love. "My beautiful, brave queen," Jae-hyun murmured against her skin. "How did I live before you?" Yoona ran her fingers through his hair, cherishing his vulnerability. "We were both half alive before, now we're whole." Their bodies moved together with practiced intimacy, each touch speaking volumes of trust and devotion. The world outside faded away until there was nothing but their shared breath, their intertwined hearts. Later, wrapped in silk sheets in each other's arms, they watched the first hints of dawn color the sky. Yoona traced patterns on Jae-hyun's chest while he played with her hair, neither needing words to express their contentment. This was their empire, not just the territory they controlled or the power they wielded, but these quiet moments of perfect understanding. In each other, they had found not just love, but a partnership that made them both stronger. Jae-hyun pressed a kiss to her temple. "Rest, Jagia. I've got you." Yoona snuggled closer, safe in the arms of the most dangerous man in Seoul, the man who had become her protector, her lover, her equal. Together they had built something beautiful from the ashes of her humiliation and his loneliness. As sleep began to claim them, their breathing synchronized, hearts beating in perfect harmony, they had found their happy ending in the most unexpected place, in the dangerous, beautiful world they now ruled together.